The Testaments, Season 1 Episode 6 Recap and Review. Stadium. Episode 6 of The Testaments begins with the school on tenterhooks. Today is the day that the aunts decide on the best suitors for each of the girls. It's usually a toss-up between 2 or 3 men, then there's house visits and weddings. Aunt Lydia gathers the other aunts and starts to look over the girls. She knows them well, including what they deeply desire. However, Lydia admits she's not sure what Agnes wants. The irony of an unmarried woman picking out husbands for these girls is not lost on her though. Flashbacks this episode jump back to see Lydia as an elementary school teacher. Lessons are constantly being cancelled and interestingly, her colleague here is Vivian, aka Aunt Vidala. Armed guards are outside the school and send Keith, the only male in the staff room, outside. There, they shoot him dead. The others watch in shock before they're taken and brought to a stadium. There, the girls are taken into different areas, with pregnant women pulled aside. Lydia watches all of this unfold and realizes that there's been a forced change in leadership. Everything has spiraled out of control quickly. The black uniformed soldiers publicly execute a bunch of women. As people in the crowd are shocked and look set to try and escape, Lydia realizes their best option is to hunker down and wait. In the present, the aunts discuss the best matchups, with Lydia and Vidala butting heads over Becca's matchup with Commander Maddox. This is the guy who gave her alcohol at the ball and Lydia is loath to match them up. For now, Lydia dismisses her and brings Vidala in to check on Hulda and make sure she's become a woman. However, the other focus of the Plums right now is Becca's fate. Shu is quick to bring up how her friends put themselves in jeopardy to save her reputation. Unfortunately, this hasn't gone unnoticed from the aunts and Shu is actually punished for hitting her fellow Plum. Hulda is the one who has to hold her wrists down while Vidala strikes her. Lydia ends up seeing this from outside the classroom, likening these girls to cooking a steak. She reflects back on the time at the stadium, where she worked hard to keep her mental state intact. Vivian praises Lydia for being a good teacher and the pair are actually on good terms. However, in the morning she finds Vivian gone. Lydia realizes at this point that having friends in Gilead will only lead to pain and suffering. She's tried to pass this lesson on to her handmaids and Plum girls, but that's easier said than done. Lydia is eventually taken by the soldiers, who lead her up to see Commander Judd. He's in charge of the women's sphere, deciding where she should be placed in the new order of Gilead. Lydia doesn't fight back, especially given her own abortion all those years ago could get her in a lot of trouble. Instead, she smooths over Judd's ego, telling him he's doing good work. Lydia is the one who suggests the idea of having aunts overseeing the girls. Back in the present, things aren't going too well for Judd. With Penny experiencing complications with her pregnancy and an inevitable miscarry that follows, he shows up at the school a bit of a mess. Vidala is quick to kiss his ass but Lydia, instead, plays it well. With the Mayday offensive heating up, Judd takes some of the commanders off the table, knowing they won't be eligible this season. Meanwhile, Agnes speaks to Becca and admits she's in love with Garth. Agnes eventually speaks to Lydia and questions whether she may be matched up with Garth. It's an interesting dilemma for her to ponder over, and she contemplates whether to accept the request or not. Either way, she does question his eligibility with the other aunts. Back in the flashbacks, Judd brings Lydia out to the stadium once again to prove her worth. Given a gun, she's forced to hand out swift justice. Among the women is none other than Vivian. Lydia follows the plotline of her survival, and she pulls the trigger against her friend, but the gun is not loaded. Judd watches this and Lydia passes the test of her character. However, it also severs the close bond they once had together. With Judd putting Lydia in charge of the girls, she gets to choose the outfits for the aunts and intentionally picks out an uncomfortable fabric as a reminder. In the present, when Penny loses a child, Lydia shows to speak to Judd. She contemplates whether it may be time to bring in a handmaid, but Judd is quick to bring up how it's not her domain anymore. Judd commends Lydia all the same, telling her she's worth more than rubies. Speaking of jewels, we learn here that Aunt Estee was actually the original Pearl Girl. With the matches made and the aunts having made their decisions, Lydia is resolute in her desire to prep these girls for the hostility of Gilead. Interestingly, Lydia also made another promise too. After Boston fell and the drama that ensued there, Lydia vowed to document everything and everyone. Aunts are allowed to write, the only women allowed to do so in Gilead, but we don't see exactly what she's writing down. However, we do see Vidala show up at Agnes' place to tell her the news of who her match is going to be. The episode review. The Testaments returns this week with a solid episode, diving into Aunt Lydia's background and how she came to be an aunt. The whole tale is fascinating, as we see her desire to survive and adapt, eventually spilling over to that incident in the stadium. It's a harsh lesson that Lydia learned, and it clearly broke something between Vivian, who later becomes Vidala, and Lydia. After all, with Lydia now her boss, it's interesting that Judd is orchestrating this coup to unseat Lydia and bring Vidala in for a change in management. This could also be a big test of Lydia's character too. It seems as if, because of Vidala's sins, she hasn't been an aunt for very long. Could she have been a handmaid or a Martha before this? It seems like she may have been promoted up to aunt. We do also get a fascinating and unexpected segment where we learn Aunt Este was the original Pearl Girl. Hopefully we explore more of that development across the season, especially as we don't know exactly when or how this Pearl Girl program was brought into Gilead. However, we still don't know who Agnes has been matched with. Given Lydia's comments about friendships being dangerous in Gilead, perhaps they put Garth into the mix, and then he's been matched with someone like Shu or Becca. Narratively, it would make sense in a cruel twist of irony to pair Becca, who has little prospects on the marriage market, with the guy whom Agnes is pining over. It would also lean into Lydia's lessons about friendships being bad in Gilead. Out of all the episodes this season though, this is the one that feels most closely aligned to the early seasons of The Handmaid's Tale. Hopefully we'll get more chapters like this because it feels like the show is just starting to hit its stride. Roll on next week. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more videos. Thanks for watching.